Hey guys, I've got a new Vanguard video for today. This time it is going to be on the new Dragon Empire deck from BT11. This is Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion. This was the first boss unit for the Narukami clan way back around the start of the Limit Break era for Vanguard. This was very early on. Not as early as Dragonic Overlord, of course, but after that. And speaking of Dragonic Overlord, Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion is his brother, actually. So yeah, a little bit of a fact about him. So let's just start going over the deck. Of course, for the ride deck, we start off with the generic Overdress starter. This one is Spark Kid Dragoon. This is the one that comes with Vermilion. So there's nothing really saying you have to run this one, but just for thematic, since it's a Narukami unit and is one of the most famous starters for that deck, we're going to be using him. Next up is Red River Dragoon. This has the effect of when this unit is rode upon by a grade 2 with only Narukami for its clan, search your deck for up to 1 Eternal Thunderbolt, reveal it and put it into your hand, and then shuffle the deck. Now, Eternal Thunderbolt is the order card for the deck, so since Red River mentioned it, let's go over it. We play 4 Eternal Thunderbolts. It has the effect of this card can also be played from drop. And you play this card if you have a Vanguard with Vermilion in its card name and only Narukami for the clan. Choose one of your Vanguards and until the end of this turn it gets the effects continuous on Vanguard. When your opponent's rearguard is hit by this unit's attack and would be retired from rearguard, you bind it instead. And it gets the other effect of continuous on Vanguard. If your opponent has no rear guards, all of your front row rear guards get plus 5,000 power. And if you played this card from drop, you then bind it. So even though we do play 4, technically you can use this up to 8 times, which is very nice. So even if you discard this card for the ride deck, you can still use it, which is nice. These make great discard targets. We'll continue on with Red River Dragoon's effects. Its other effect is, which we will be using as we play multiple copies of this guy. When this unit boosts, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with only Narukami in its clan, Counterblast 1. Choose one of your opponent's back row rear guards and you bind it. If you did not bind a card, you may soul charge 2. Now that might seem like a lot of needless soul charging, but there are quite a few effects in this deck that require it. Next up for the grade 2, we have Thunderstorm Dragoon. This has the effect of when this unit is rode upon by a grade 3 card with only Narukami for its clan. You look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 card with only Narukami for its clan, or 1 Eternal Thunderbolt from among them, reveal it and put it into your hand and shuffle the deck. There are many cards you can grab with this effect. You can get more copies of Vermilion, you can get more copies of himself, Red River Dragoon, a lot of other cards we'll see later on, and of course you can also grab the order. So quite a lot of choices that you can grab with that effect. Its other effect is when this unit is placed on rearguard. If you have a Vanguard with only Narukami for its clan, you may soul charge 1, and this unit gets plus 5,000 power for the turn, which is nice. Onto the boss unit of the deck. This is Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion. His first effect is, once per turn, on Vanguard Circle, Counterblast 1, choose 2 of your units with only Narukami for their clan, and they get plus 5,000 power until the end of turn. And also, until the end of turn, when this unit would attack, you choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards along with their Vanguard, and this unit battles all the units on the chosen rearguard circles and your opponent's Vanguard. So the original Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion could only do this once you reached 4 damage, and that effect you had to do with a Counterblast of 5, and he only gave himself 2,000 power. And you couldn't choose the rear guards, you had to select the front row rear guards. This is a straight up upgrade from the original effect. It is leagues better than the original. Just all in all, a great upgraded version of the original Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion. And then its other effect is, on Vanguard, once per turn, at the end of the battle that this unit attacked, if you played a normal order this turn, and your opponent's damage zone has 4 or less cards, you discard a card from hand, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, and you deal it 1 damage. So that is a new effect they've given to Kaiser. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. It's kind of an out-of-nowhere effect. But then again, a lot of the Dragonic Kaiser Vermilions have kind of focused on attacking multiple units, so they didn't really have anything else to go off of for another effect. It's kind of something that Dragonic Empire in general does, dealing damage outside of attacks, so why not? And that is it for the ride deck. Of course, now onto the main. 3 more copies of your Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion. That's kind of obvious. We got the 4 copies of the order for the deck, Eternal Thunderbolt. 3 more copies of Thunderstorm Dragoon. A actual new card now that we'll be going over. This is Dragonic Death Scythe. It has the continuous effect of, during your turn, if your opponent's front row has no rear guards, this unit gets an extra 5,000 power, which is nice. And also auto, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, if you have a greater Vanguard with only Narukami for its clown, you Soul Blast 2. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards and you bind it. If you did not bind a card by this effect, you draw a card instead. Very nice that it gives you multiple choices for its effect. Now, Soul Blast 2 is kind of costly, but you do kind of counteract this with your Red River Dragoons effect. So there's that at least. The Soul Blast 2 is kind of connected to the original. Actually, no. It's connected to the V-Series Dragonic Death Scythe, who used Soul Blast. The original used Counterblast 2. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. They're kind of combining versions of these past cards, as a lot of them have versions from the original series and the V reboot, which is pretty cool. So they're kind of combining them all into a perfect version of the card. That is it for Death Scythe. The final grade 2 for the deck is, this really can be anything. There's quite a few cards that you can use that that Dragon Empire has, but I've decided to put in Stun Voltec Dragon. Its only effect is, if your Vanguard's attack hits this turn, this unit gets an extra 10,000 power. That's pretty good. As you can see, its base power is only 8,000, which is the average for grade 1s. However, with the effect, it gets an extra 10,000 power on top of that. Now, originally, this card wasn't that good. It's still kind of not. However, because of how Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion's effect works and how this one's worded, you will be attacking multiple targets with Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion's effect. So, chances are at least 1 or 2 of those attacks will go through. So, since more than likely your Vanguard's attack will hit on something at least, Stun Voltec Dragon's effect will go off more often than not than it did before. However, again, since its power is fairly low on its own, we're only playing 2 copies. On to the grade 1s. We've gone over Red River Dragoon. We've got 3 more copies of it. Onto the final of the encounter cards for Narukami introduced here. We've got Rising Phoenix. It has a drop effect. When any card is bound during your turn by your card effects, if you have a Vanguard with only Narukami for its clan, you Soul Blast 1 and you call this card to your rearguard. That is pretty nice. This can take place during any time during your turn, even in attacks. So if you bind cards with Vermilion's attack, with the help of the order, you can actually multi-attack with Rising Phoenix, which is pretty nice. And then it has another effect of retire it, choose one of your units, and it gets plus 5,000 power until the end of turn. This effect is nice as you can retire it, it gets sent to your drop, you can use something to bind something, and you can just bring it right back, which is pretty cool. Kind of thematic since it's a Phoenix and all. Another kind of whatever you want space for the deck. This, again, can be anything. I've picked Stealth Dragon, Fushimachi Madoka. This is a pretty good generic Dragonic Empire card. It's great for defensive purposes, especially. Rearguard and Guardian Circle effect. If your opponent's drop zone has 4 or more cards, this unit gets an extra 2,000 power and 5,000 shield. If there are 8 or more cards in your opponent's drop, this gets an extra 5,000 shield, which is nice. Now, I know you will be binding a lot more than you will be having cards in the drop, but you can also, if you want, keep cards in your opponent's drop to get that effect off. Plus, naturally, just in the game, your drop zones will be building up as time goes on. So he's a great late game card. Of course, we've got the 3 Dragon Empire PGs. I picked the Thunder Dragon one, which is Twin Bunkler Dragon, which will kind of works thematically with Vermilion, as they're both Thunder Dragons. Of course, the 1 Elementaria Sanctitude. This is run in almost every deck that focuses on grade 3s. 4 copies of Conduct Spark Dragon. This is one of the non-effect crits for Dragon Empire. Again, it's pretty thematic as it's a thunder-based dragon. Blaze Warmonk Sogiyu. This is one of the other non-effect crits. I'm not running the effect crits in this deck. It's not really necessary. In fact, the effect crits aren't really all that good now that I think about it. But sometimes they do come up. So for decks that kind of need it, I will keep it in. But yeah, 3 copies of this guy. Of course, your 4 non-effect heals. You can use effect heals if you want. I personally don't like it, as the effect heals, their shield value fluctuates. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. It all depends on the matchup. This one's shield value is set, so you don't have to worry about anything. Of course, the 4 effect draws. That's just nice. I could also see you running the fronts as well, as typically you will be attacking with Vermilion first. So, yeah, I can kind of see you wanting to run fronts as well. Heck, maybe even rainbow triggers if you want. So you can run the draws, the fronts, the crits, and the heals. Of course, the final card of the deck is the Dragon Empire Overtrigger. And that is it for Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion. I hope you enjoyed this video.